To find vertical asymptotes algebraically, we first factor the numerator and denominator and write the rational function in lowest terms. That is, we want to reduce any factors that are common to the top and the bottom. Step 2 is the zeros of the factors that remain in the denominator after simplifying will be the location of the vertical asymptotes. For example, to find the vertical asymptotes of this rational function, we first need to factor the top and the bottom. So in the numerator, we get x plus 2 and x plus 1. In the denominator, we can factor the difference of squares as x plus 2 and x minus 2. Recognize that there are common factors in the numerator and denominator. X plus 2 and x plus 2 will reduce. We can cancel those two factors. And now look at the denominator. Look at the zeros of the denominator. So set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. We get that x is equal to 2. This is the vertical asymptote. Notice that this process is very similar to the process we use to find domain of rational functions. Recall, to do that, we set the denominator equal to 0. In this case, we can add 4 to both sides and then take the square root of both sides. And we get x is equal to plus or minus 2. So there are actually two restrictions to domain. One of those, x equals 2, is caused by the vertical asymptote. The other restriction is not an asymptote. It's actually going to be a hole in the graph. So these factors that reduce or cancel will generate a hole in the graph that we'll see later. There's going to be a hole at x equals negative 2. So there's only one vertical asymptote in this case, x equals 2. The restriction of negative 2 is generated by a hole in the graph. To find the vertical asymptotes here, we will start by factoring the top and the bottom. We get x minus 5, x plus 1 in the top. And in the denominator, we get x plus 2 and x plus 3. Notice in this example, none of those factors reduce or cancel because we don't have anything in common with the top and the bottom. So to find the vertical asymptote, we set the denominator now equal to 0. And now that it's factored, it'll be a little bit easier. And we solve. So like usual, we will split this into two separate equations. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve. X equals negative 2 and x equals negative 3. These are both vertical asymptotes. In this example, nothing reduced after we factored, so we don't have any holes in the graph.